Alright, this video is showing you how to replace small quad, dirt bike, three-wheeler tires. These are 6-inch wheels. They're split wheels, so split hubs, so you can take these 6 bolts off and then the hub comes off and everything. So we're gonna teach you guys how. There's a tube in these also. You can see there's the rubber Schrader valve coming out of there, and it's really hard to get the tube in without pinching it in between the two wheels, split rims. So I'm going to teach you guys how to do that. As you can see, this is quite a bit smaller, it looks like, but it's going to fit on no problem. I already got those to fit on. All right, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to either let out the air with a screwdriver, a pin, or a pencil or something, or you can use this tool right here. If you can find one of these, sometimes they're on the valve stem itself, and that tool takes out what you call the Schrader valve, takes it off from this side. Then this pops out and the air will be completely let out. Another thing, what happens a lot of times on these older tubes, maybe 20 years or even 15 years or older, is this little rubber piece right there will not hold air anymore, so you have to replace this whole valve. It's usually, you can get them in bicycles. They're the same Schrader valve. Every time I have a bad tube, I keep a collection of them and change them out, and then test them with some soapy water, sudsy ammonia, and you can see the bubbles coming out of the stem if it's leaking. And then you put a new one in, tighten it up, and boom, no more leaks. Then you think you have a bad tube, but it's actually the Schrader valve. Anyways, getting back to taking apart the wheel. So you got all the 6 nuts and bolts taken off. Make sure to keep them in order. You take off this hub. So now what you have is 2 rims, and what we're going to do is get a screwdriver and gently pry in between all the way around there until we get this to pop off. Be right back. Okay, so we got this off, and the prying method you'd use is going to be like this, and you're going to be basically pushing down on the tire to get it to separate, and you're going to have to go all the way around. Once it separates, you can hear it kind of pop. It'll slide right out. And there's our old tube in there. And then here's the other side. Now, to get the other side out, you're going to need to put this hub back on the ground to have some sort of pressure against it. Otherwise, it's not going to work right for some reason. I've tried it, but it doesn't work. So I'm going to get both sides off. All right, so now that both sides have been pried apart, we're going to have these 2 parts here off to the side, and then we have our tube. Now remember, I took out the Schrader valve. Looks like they had some sealant stuff in there from before because it's probably leaking. You can kind of squish some of the air out and pull the tube out because we're going to put it in the new tire. So now that we have the tube out, we're going to put the Schrader valve back in, and remember, it's going to go with the threads, which are closest to my finger. Those are going to be on the outside, and it's going to go like that. And then we're going to get our Schrader valve tool, which is right here. And we're going to put that back in. And then we're going to pump up the tire and look for, or the tube, I should say, and we're going to look for leaks. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. We're going to tighten it back in, give it a nice, good twist, and we're going to pump up the tire and check for leaks. All right, we have our tube pumped up. I'm going to note, you don't have to pump this up a lot, just enough to be slightly firm. That's what she said. All right, here is our Schrader valve. We're gonna spray some sudsy ammonia in it. Bad shot, give me a second. All right, there's our sudsy ammonia. And you see there is some bubbles, but if it was leaking out of the Schrader valve, it would be blowing bubbles. So it looks like we're good there. And as you can see, there's 2 parts right here that looked like they were been pinched in the rim. It's like right there and right there. So anyways, luckily though, it looks like it's still holding air. We can test it. Looking for bubbles, spraying. Doesn't look like we have any. This is just a kid's little quad. So I'm just making sure we don't have to do this process again, get a new tube. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys now. We're gonna deflate it, and we're going to put the tube that's deflated with the Schrader valve out into the new tire. Okay, so we have our tube that has the Schrader valve out of it. kind of see there's nothing in there. And it is now in our tire. Okay, the next step is we have our half of our wheel. If there's any rust like that, I suggest to clean it up, because any sharp pieces or rusty parts can easily pop your tube. So I'm going to quickly sand that up or wire brush it and then come right back. Okay, so one of the rims, so one side of the wheel that splits, is going to have that hole right there. Right there. And that's where your Schrader valve is going to go in. Make sure it's all the way in there. Okay, and then just kind of even it out. Try to make it even. Don't let it be all crooked on one side. Okay, so now here's what the other side looks like. If you were to put this other side on and start putting the nuts and bolts through it, it would pinch this tube. So here's the solution to that. Do your best to just move it on over to the side as much as possible. And even with that, it's still gonna be in the way. You'll never get it. I've fought with this thing for like an hour one time before I figured out how to do it right. And so here's the solution. You get it as much as possible. And it's important too to line these holes up as best as you can, because it's gonna help you later on. So I'm gonna line this up. And then it's important also to remember which side goes in which. Usually you can see where the paint is. So you put that like that. And then on your bolts, you may have longer ones. You may have shorter ones. See the difference here? As far as the length of the bolt, you're going to use the longer ones. And even if you, how do I say this? You might want to even use aftermarket ones or ones that are not for the bike, just to get it started, and I'll show you why. Okay, let me put these all in place. I'll be right back. Okay, so we have the 3 longer bolts in with the washers. You may need to take the washers off when you first start this. Okay, on the other side I have the nuts and the washers on, just finger tight. And they're nylock, so there's that red rubber nylon locking thing there. So from here is the part that is the secret of the whole video. The whole name of the video is how to get your tube in a tire without pinching it. This one looks pretty good, but there might be some tubes sticking in these areas around this edge that could be pinching. And so here's what you do. You put your Schrader valve back in, and then you slowly pump up the tube. And you're gonna be, while you're pumping it up, you're gonna be looking through these 3 holes to make sure the tube is not going in, which I've done it 3 times now on the other 3 wheels, and I haven't had any problems. So we're gonna pump this up. When we pump it up, you can see that the bead of the tire, right where my thumb is, has not seated to the edge of the wheel right there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get that sudsy ammonia or soapy water, any sort of lubricant, things that can help. We're gonna spray it all around. I mean, you could even use cooking oil or motor oil, 2-stroke oil, whatever you got laying around. It really doesn't matter, but the stuff that dries up or cleaner is I would say the best. Do not use gasoline or starter fluid or anything like that. It's not probably a good idea, as it'll dry up too quickly, and it'll also make the tire kind of funky and over rubbery. It'll break down the rubber. So we're gonna pump this tire up, and as we do, you're gonna see the bead is gonna seat. So it's still like really low pressure, but as it's pumping up, you're gonna see the bead start to come up. See if I can get a better shot. And again, we're looking at these holes to make sure that the tube doesn't go sneaking through, like right there. You can see that's not all the way seated good. So as we're talking now, it's a slow process, but the air pressure, you can barely see it creeping. It's gonna start slowly seating that. Boy, it's slow, but it is happening. I'm gonna keep it right up that shot right there, so you can see it slowly starting to seat. And I'm looking through the holes, and I do see a little bit of the tube kind of sneaking through. gonna wait until it seats all the way. And here we are, we're almost there. Sometimes they'll make a little ping popping sound like a balloon or like a guitar string, but for the most part they usually just slide in, especially when you have the lubricant in there, a little bit of the soapy water. And we're only at like 35 psi, so if you have like a big heavy compressor, I would do it very slow. So we're almost seated all the way, it looks like we are. I'm gonna go ahead and stop it. And you can see right here, you can see some of the tube is starting to sneak in there. And you can see it's definitely not, there's a gap between the two wheels, and that's okay. So here's the trick. So now that it's seated on both sides, it looks like it's seated all good on both sides, and we're about 40 psi. Once again, you're going to, also, if you start to get bubbles like that, that's probably not a good sign. Probably the tube is pinched, maybe. That might have been from before. All right, so I just let all the air out. I took the Schrader valve out, and now all the air is out. And now, as you can see, we have a lot of slack in these bolts. They'll move up and down now, and for some reason, I don't quite know, but when the tube opens up in here, it goes all the way in. Those are just the holes going through the wheel. You can see that my hand underneath there. I don't know if you can or not see it. It's just a hole. Anyways, so once you air it up and it seats, and then you let the air out again, it lets the rim completely seat together. Even though the rim's separated, I can move it a little bit here. Now that air, the tube deflated, it lets the wheel go into each other without having the rim stuck in between the two parts of the rim when you sandwich it together. So step A, put the tube inside the tire. Step B, put the Schrader valve through the one side of the wheel. Step C, put the other wheel on, side of the wheel on, line it up as best you can, and then you're going to use the longest bolts. Even if you have to use aftermarket different ones that you bought at the hardware store, then you're going to line them up and you're going to put the 3 bolts through. You only need 3, and you're just going to hand tighten them. You don't need to get all the way down or start to tighten it up. Then step D, you're going to put the Schrader valve back in, and you're going to air up the whole tire until the bead seats. Don't forget to spray soapy water or some sort of lubricant around the bead while it's seating. Then after that's seated, only should be about 30 to 35 pounds, 40 maybe. You're going to take the Schrader valve back out and deflate the tube, and when that happens, you're going to see that when it deflates, all the tube's going to be in the tire area and not in between the rim. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tighten all these bolts down. Make sure that the two sides of the rim here, there's this side right here, and then there's the inside, which is right there. You can't really see it, but right there. Those should be touching each other. You should be able to see that they're all the way. So you can move it a little bit. You can see that they're all the way butted up against each other, and it's metal on metal, and there's no tube inside here. So all you're gonna do is now tighten these 3 bolts, put the other 3 shorties in, going the opposite way. That is that the head is going to be going this way. You're going to tighten them all up, and then you're going to put the Schrader valve back in and fill the tire up, and you're done. Hope that helped everybody. If you'd like to leave a comment and a like, it helps us get more views and share this with other do-it-yourselfers so they can get their baby quad going for their little one, or maybe for themselves. You guys have a great day. Thanks for watching, and then subscribe if you want to hear some of my other videos. Thanks.